A lot of people are concerned that some may be applying for MAID for the wrong reason.
The people who would be using it are people that society has deemed throwaways. And if society can't be bothered to give them the dignity in life, then the very least they can do is give them that 5 minutes of dignity before death.
Farsood once considered himself a throwaway.
You have vegetables,
yes,
not
I
just
do,
beans.
and blueberries and celery.
But now he has hope, which makes his back pain bearable.
It's amazing what an act of kindness can do.
Isn't it? It really is. And yeah, I wouldn't have thought it possible.
Have you signed our petition at helpnothomicide.com? I hope you do. The petition will be delivered to Canadian Health Minister Jean-Yves Duclos. The petition calls on him to put a stop to using physician-assisted homicide as a cure for poverty, homelessness, despair, depression, chronic illness, and even eating disorders. Now, as I pointed out in my last video on this very topic, which you can see at that same website, helpnothomicide.com, those are just the opportunities for adults to dispatch themselves from their earthly confines. Parents with disabled infants are now being offered medical assistance in death to their babies. Reasonable people would call that infanticide. Being an innocent disabled baby should not be a death sentence in a civilized society, but here we are. I guess that's what you get when you have a government-controlled, publicly funded, and thus fully rationed healthcare system like we do in Canada. Now, also in my previous report, I pointed out that what little guardrails there were in Canada's physician-assisted suicide laws have been removed completely. You don't have to be terminally ill anymore. In fact, mental illness will be a criterion for physician-assisted homicide as of March 2023. And the Liberals have removed the 10-day wait time between asking for a physician-assisted suicide and receiving it. So in Canada, as it stands, under Justin Trudeau, your worst day could be your last. Now, I want to show you just how tragic removing that sober second thought waiting period could have been for just one man. Take a listen.
Amir Farsood has applied for medically assisted dying, known as MAID. He lives in constant agony due to a back injury, but has started the process for end of life because his rooming house is up for sale and he can't find anywhere else to live that he can afford. He barely survives on Ontario disability support payments, which are just over $1,200 a month. He doesn't want to die, but being homeless is not an option.
I know in my present health condition I wouldn't survive it anyway.
Farsood meets the criteria for MAID: physical suffering due to disability that cannot be relieved. His doctor, who knows Farsood's real reason for MAID is his fear of being homeless, signed off on the application in August. Farsood needs a second to do the same. There's a 90-day waiting period. He believes he could potentially access MAID in about a month.
I don't wish to be dead, even with the pain, even with the meds. I still want to be here.
Now, after that interview aired, guess what happened? That man who thought nobody cared, who thought his only option was to end his life, received an outpouring of support from strangers. Here's an update to his story just a couple of days later.
After our City News story aired, Amir Farsood was overwhelmed by all the people who reached out to offer help. Then this GoFundMe page, set up by a stranger named Effie, took off, raising a little over $60,000 from people around the world in a matter of days.
If the story hadn't piqued your interest, if you hadn't come here to do it, and then people, including Effie, hadn't seen it, I'd be dead. I'm going to look into the camera and say, thank you, Effie, whether you like it or not. Thank you. Please don't cut that part out.
But Farsood's joy is tinged with guilt. He knows other people with disabilities on ODSP are still living in poverty and have to survive on $1,200 a month for food, rent, and all other necessities.
500,000 other Ontarians didn't win that lottery. It's like, you see in the movies, the death row inmate that at the last second, gets the reprieve, and it kind of feels like that.
Because of his agonizing back injury, Farsood qualifies for MAID. He has physical suffering due to disability that cannot be relieved. One doctor signed off on his application. He needed one more before proceeding. He's put that application away. But after seeing his story, many took issue about the ethics of applying for MAID due to poverty.
But under Justin Trudeau's Liberals and their new rules, or rather absence of rules, that man could have ended his life on that very day, right after his interview with City News. No wait time. He would have met the criteria for Dr. Death to show up at his door, having a chronic illness for which the treatment he's receiving is not satisfactory to him. It's a neat little trick the government's doing here, especially lately. Besides the normal delays in accessing a specialist here in Canada because we all get to suffer in the same government-mandated wait lines for rationed healthcare, the people in charge of the healthcare system just spent the last 2.5 years creating the conditions to exacerbate not just your mental health issues, but also your physical health problems too, by canceling appointments to keep hospitals on the ready for a COVID surge. And if you did get a doctor's appointment, it was probably a virtual visit on Zoom where your doctor can't really assess you. And so your physical issues continued to get worse. Then, like so many people, maybe you worked at a non-essential business. And so you were repeatedly told to close your doors by the government to stop the spread of COVID, which didn't work anyway. But it did create a cascade of financial concerns, housing issues, relationship problems, addiction crises, and of course, despair. Times are tough, and sometimes they're tough through no fault of your own. But the government who did this to you, they've got a solution. They'll kill you instead of helping you, and then they'll call it compassion. Because according to the same sort of people who constantly tell you they care about marginalized people, their policies lay bare the reality that these so-called compassionate ones think you're better off dead than poor. And it's just so much easier to exterminate you than give you a hand up. Get out of their hair and quit complaining about how bad the things they did to you are. Your presence is a constant reminder to them of their failures. If you agree with me that no sane and just society treats vulnerable people this way, please sign our petition at helpnothomicide.com. For Rebel News, I'm Sheila Gunn-Reid. Your very worst day, your darkest hour, should not be your last. If you agree with me, please sign our petition at helpnothomicide.com.